The diner was nearly empty when the little boy noticed her again. His eyes widened, his fork frozen in midair. "Daddy," he whispered, tugging at his father's sleeve. "Look, it's her again." At the corner of the room, under the flickering neon sign that hummed softly against the rain outside, a woman in a faded green uniform bent over a table, wiping it clean with slow, careful strokes. Her movements were quiet, almost reverent, as if each crumb carried a story of its own. The father, a man named Aaron Miller, turned his head slightly. He didn't need to look long. He knew who his son was talking about. The woman's thin frame, the tired set of her shoulders, and the way she avoided eye contact with everyone, it all looked painfully familiar. But this wasn't their first time seeing her. Aaron and his 8-year-old son, Caleb, had been coming to Mason's diner every Friday evening for the past 2 months. It had started as a small father-son ritual. After Aaron's wife passed away, Friday nights were their way of keeping something consistent, something normal. But recently, it had become something else. Because each time they came, that same woman was there, cleaning tables, mopping floors, working long past closing hours. Her name tag read, Clara. "Can we say hi this time?" Caleb asked softly. His voice carried that innocent concern only children could express, honest and pure. Aaron hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Maybe later, buddy," he said, reaching for his coffee. "Let's not bother her while she's working." But Caleb didn't buy it. He kept glancing over, watching Clara move between tables, her back slightly hunched. There was something about her, something fragile yet strong. She worked like someone who didn't have time to feel tired. Aaron noticed it too, though he tried not to. There was a quiet sadness in her that mirrored his own. He didn't know her story, but sometimes pain recognized pain. That night, as they left the diner, Caleb turned around one last time. Clara was standing by the window, wringing a towel, her gaze lost in the dark reflection of the glass. Rain streaked down the pane, and for a brief second, she looked up, and their eyes met. She smiled faintly, a tired, polite curve of her lips. Then she turned away. 2 weeks later, Aaron pulled into the diner parking lot again. The neon sign buzzed overhead, Mason's Diner, open 24 hours. It was just after 6, and the smell of bacon and fresh coffee hit them as soon as they stepped in. Caleb ran to their usual booth by the window. "Do you think she's here, Dad?" he asked, his tone hopeful. Aaron looked around. She wasn't. For a strange reason, he felt a hint of disappointment. "She probably has the day off," he replied, sliding into the booth. But halfway through their pancakes, she appeared, pushing through the kitchen door with a tray in hand, wearing that same faded green uniform. Her hair was tied up messily, and there was a faint bruise near her wrist, almost hidden beneath the sleeve. Aaron noticed it, though he didn't mean to. Clara worked quietly, never rushing, never stopping. She smiled at customers when needed but mostly kept her head down. Caleb couldn't stop watching. "She's really nice," he said. "I saw her help the man in the wheelchair last time. Remember? She even brought his coffee out to the car when he forgot it." Aaron nodded. "Yeah, I remember." When Clara passed their table, Caleb looked up and waved. She paused, surprised, and then smiled gently. "Hey there," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes seemed to carry weight, years of something unspoken. "Hi. We see you here a lot," Caleb said cheerfully. Aaron gave an apologetic smile. "Sorry, he's pretty talkative." "It's fine," Clara replied kindly. "I like talkative kids. Makes the place feel less empty." Something in the way she said it made Aaron glance up. Less empty. The words lingered. He wondered what kind of emptiness she meant. Before he could respond, the manager called her name sharply from behind the counter. Clara flinched slightly, murmured a quick, "Excuse me," and hurried away. Caleb frowned. "That man's mean." Aaron said nothing. The next Friday, they came again, but things were different. The diner was busier, filled with the smell of fries and chatter. Clara was moving quickly between tables, balancing trays and refilling coffee cups. As Aaron watched, one of the customers at a corner table, a man in a construction vest, started raising his voice. His order had been mixed up. "I said no onions. Are you deaf or something?" he barked. Aaron stiffened. Clara apologized quietly, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to replace the plate. But the man wasn't done. "You think you can do this job? Maybe you should learn to listen." The room went silent. Even the jukebox music seemed to fade. Caleb looked horrified. "Dad!" Aaron stood up before his son could finish. He walked over calmly but firmly. "Hey," he said to the man, his voice low. "She said she's fixing it. Sit down." The man turned to him, face red. "Mind your own business, pal." "Yeah, I would, if you weren't yelling at someone just doing her job." There was a tense pause before the manager rushed over to smooth things out. The man grumbled and sat down, muttering under his breath. Clara stood frozen, her eyes wide with embarrassment and gratitude. Aaron gave her a small nod and returned to his table. Caleb beamed at him. "That was awesome, Dad." Aaron smiled faintly but didn't feel proud, just heavy. He'd seen that look in Clara's eyes before. The look of someone too used to being shouted at. When they left the diner that night, Clara followed them outside for a brief moment. "Hey," she said, catching her breath. "Thank you, for earlier." Aaron shrugged. Anyone would have done the same. She gave a small, sad smile. "No, they wouldn't have." She hesitated for a second, then added quietly, "You've got a good boy." Aaron looked at Caleb, who was trying to catch raindrops with his tongue. "Yeah," he said softly. "He's the best part of me." Clara's eyes softened, then she quickly excused herself and went back inside. The next week, when Aaron and Caleb arrived, Clara wasn't there. Her shift must have changed, or maybe she'd quit. But by the third Friday, she was back, though she looked different. Her eyes were red, and her uniform looked more worn than before. Caleb noticed right away. "She looks sad today," he whispered. Aaron nodded. "Maybe she's just tired." But it wasn't just tiredness. When Clara passed their table to clear dishes, her hands were shaking. The manager barked something from behind the counter about being faster, and she flinched again. Later, as the diner emptied out, Aaron saw her slip outside through the back door. He didn't mean to watch, but through the window, he saw her sitting on the curb, her head in her hands. He hesitated for a long time before going out there. The cold night air hit his face as he stepped outside. Clara looked up, startled, quickly wiping her eyes. "Sorry," she said, forcing a smile. "Didn't mean to make a scene." Aaron sat down on the curb beside her. "You didn't," he said. "Rough night?" She let out a small, bitter laugh. "Rough life, maybe." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the sound of cars passing by. "Look," she said after a while, her voice trembling slightly. "I know you and your boy are just being kind, but you don't have to worry about me. I'm fine." Aaron looked at her, really looked at her. "You don't seem fine." She blinked, caught off guard. "I'm just trying to keep going," she whispered. "Some days, that's all you can do." Aaron nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know that feeling." Clara turned her head slightly, studying him. "You lost someone too, didn't you?" Aaron's throat tightened. "My wife. 2 years ago." She exhaled softly. "I'm sorry." He shrugged faintly. "You learn to keep moving. For him." He gestured toward the diner window where Caleb was sitting, drawing smiley faces on the glass. Clara smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "He reminds me of my daughter," she said after a pause. Aaron turned to her, surprised. "You have a daughter?" Clara nodded slowly. "Had," she whispered. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the diner sign filled the silence. "She was 8, Clara continued quietly. "Car accident. 3 years ago. My husband didn't take it well. Left after that. I moved here to start over." Her voice trembled, but she kept talking, as if she'd been holding it in for too long. "Now I just work. Go home. Repeat." Aaron didn't know what to say. There were no words that could fix that kind of pain. But he understood it, the emptiness, the guilt, the struggle to keep breathing when everything hurt. "I'm sorry," he said softly. She smiled faintly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Don't be. I'm just grateful someone listened." For the first time since he'd met her, she didn't look invisible. She looked human, raw and real. Inside the diner, Caleb pressed his hands against the window and called out, "Dad, come back. My ice cream's melting." Aaron chuckled softly and stood. "Duty calls," he said, smiling gently. Clara nodded, her expression softening. "Thanks for checking on me." "Anytime," he said. "And, you should take care of yourself, Clara." She looked at him for a moment, then whispered, "You too." As Aaron walked back inside, he turned once more. Clara was still sitting there, looking up at the night sky. For the first time, she looked like someone remembering what hope felt like. That night, as Aaron tucked Caleb into bed, the boy asked, "Dad, why was she crying?" Aaron paused, sitting at the edge of the bed. "Because sometimes grown-ups get sad too, buddy. But talking helps." Caleb frowned thoughtfully. "Then maybe we should keep talking to her. So she's not alone." Aaron smiled faintly. "Maybe we should." Caleb grinned. "Good. Because she always looks happy when we're there." Aaron turned off the lamp and whispered, "Yeah, she does." But deep down, he knew the truth. Sometimes the people who smile the most are the ones holding back the biggest storms. And in the weeks to come, those storms were about to hit harder than either of them could imagine. A few weeks passed, and winter began to creep into the small town. Frost covered the diner windows in delicate patterns, and every time the door opened, a rush of cold air swept through, carrying with it the scent of snow and pine. Aaron and Caleb kept coming every Friday, as usual. But lately, Clara seemed more withdrawn. The warmth in her smile had dimmed. She still greeted Caleb kindly, still worked with quiet grace, but something had changed. One evening, after their dinner, Caleb tugged on Aaron's sleeve again. "Dad," he whispered, glancing toward the counter, "Clara looks really sick." Aaron looked over. She was pale, her movements slow, one hand pressed lightly against her side as if hiding pain. Yet she continued wiping tables, refilling coffee cups, pretending everything was fine. Aaron's heart tightened. He recognized that stubborn look, the one people wore when they couldn't afford to stop. When they finished their meal, Aaron walked up to the counter and gently set down a folded bill. "That's for dinner," he said, "and this," he added, slipping a small envelope across the counter, "is for her." The cashier frowned. "For Clara?" "Why?" "Just give it to her," Aaron replied softly. As they left, he glanced back one last time. Clara was leaning against the counter, her head lowered, and the envelope sat unopened in front of her. A few days later, Aaron came home from work to find Caleb sitting at the kitchen table, coloring a card. "What's that for?" he asked. "It's for Clara," Caleb said. "You said she wasn't feeling good. I thought maybe this would cheer her up." Aaron's chest tightened with pride and sorrow all at once. "That's really kind, buddy. Caleb grinned. She always smiles at me, so I want to make her smile too. That Friday, they returned to the diner, but Clara wasn't there. Another waitress, younger and brisk, served them instead. "Where's Clara?" Caleb asked. The waitress hesitated. "She hasn't been in for a few days," she said quietly. "I think she's dealing with something." Caleb's face fell. "Oh." Aaron thanked the waitress, trying not to show his concern. But that night, as they drove home through the falling snow, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. 3 days later, as Aaron was dropping Caleb off at school, he noticed a woman sitting on the bench near the gate, wrapped in a worn gray coat. Her hair was tucked under a knit hat, and her head was bowed. It took him a moment to realize, it was Clara. He parked the car and walked over. "Clara?" She looked up, startled. Her face was pale, thinner than before, eyes sunken but still holding that familiar softness. "Aaron," she said faintly. "Hey. What are you doing out here? You okay?" She smiled weakly. "Just waiting for the bus. Had a doctor's appointment." He studied her for a moment. "You don't look okay." Clara hesitated, then sighed. "I got some bad news. It's cancer." Her voice cracked on the last word. "They found it late." "Too late." Aaron felt his stomach drop. "Clara." She tried to smile. "I'm fine, really. I've been through worse." But her trembling hands told another story. "Do you have anyone, family?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "No one left." Aaron was silent for a long time. The cold wind brushed past, lifting strands of her hair. "Come on," he said finally. "Let me take you home." She started to protest, but he raised a hand. "Please. It's the least I can do." After a pause, she nodded. Her apartment was small, bare walls, second-hand furniture, a few photos on a crooked shelf. One of them caught Aaron's attention, a picture of a little girl with pigtails, smiling wide beside a younger, happier version of Clara. "My daughter," Clara said softly, noticing his gaze. "Lily." Aaron smiled gently. "She looks like you." She had her father's laugh, Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. "I still hear it sometimes when I fall asleep." She sank onto the couch, and for a long moment, they just sat there, two broken people bound by loss and quiet understanding. Aaron finally said, "You shouldn't be alone right now." "I've been alone a long time," she murmured. "It's easier that way. You stop expecting anything." Aaron shook his head. "No one deserves to face this alone." That evening, he picked Caleb up from school. "Guess who I saw today," he said gently. "Who?" "Clara." Caleb's eyes lit up. "Really? Is she better?" Aaron hesitated. "She's sick, buddy. Really sick." Caleb's smile faded. "Can we help her?" Aaron thought for a long moment before nodding. "Yeah. I think we can." For the next few weeks, they began visiting Clara regularly. Caleb would bring her small drawings or cookies he baked with his dad. Sometimes, they'd just sit and talk while she rested on the couch. Her apartment started to look a little less lonely. There were flowers on the table, pictures of Caleb's artwork taped to the fridge, and for the first time in years, laughter echoing through the room. But the illness was getting worse. Clara grew thinner, weaker. Some days she couldn't get out of bed. One evening, Aaron sat beside her as she dozed off. Caleb was playing quietly on the floor. Clara opened her eyes slightly and whispered, "You two are the closest thing I've had to family since Lily." Aaron's throat tightened. "You are family, Clara." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Thank you." By early spring, the diner staff had changed again. Clara couldn't work anymore. The owner mentioned she was in hospice care now, and Aaron's heart sank. He took Caleb to see her one last time. The room was filled with the soft hum of machines, and sunlight poured in through the window, painting everything in a warm glow. Clara's eyes fluttered open when she heard Caleb's voice. "Hi, Clara," he said softly, holding her hand. "I brought you something." It was the same card he'd made months ago, slightly wrinkled but still colorful. On the front, it read, "You make the world better." Clara smiled weakly, tears gathering in her eyes. "You already did that, sweetheart," she whispered. Aaron stood by the bed, unable to speak. Clara looked at him one last time and said, "Promise me something." "Anything. Keep coming to the diner. Sit by that window. Remember me when the light hits the glass." He nodded, eyes burning. "I promise." She smiled faintly. "Good. Then I can go knowing someone remembers." Her breathing slowed, her hand still wrapped around Caleb's. And as the afternoon sun touched her face, a peaceful stillness filled the room. Weeks later, Aaron and Caleb returned to Mason's diner. The booth by the window was empty, the neon sign still flickering outside. Caleb pressed his face to the glass. "Daddy," he whispered. "Look, it's her again." Aaron followed his gaze. Across the street, sunlight reflected on the diner window in a way that almost looked like a figure standing there, wiping the table silently, just as she always had. Aaron smiled softly. "Yeah, buddy," he said. "It's her." They sat quietly, letting the light warm their faces. And in that moment, it didn't feel like loss anymore, it felt like love that had simply changed its form, still there, still shining. Clara hadn't just cleaned tables. She had wiped away loneliness from two hearts that needed her just as much as she had needed them. And though her seat would forever remain empty, her presence lingered, in the laughter of a boy, the kindness of a father, and the quiet comfort of knowing that even small acts of compassion can heal the deepest wounds.